Good evening, everybody. Matt Geary here for the Geek Pridecast on this Sunday evening. With me tonight, we have a plethora of guests and the usual faces. So with me, we have Peter Ray Ellison.
Good evening, everyone.
John Joe Cosgrove.
Hello, all.
And our guests tonight, we've got Heide Goody.
Hi there.
And Iain Grant.
Hey there.
We've just had a bit of a nightmare with Skype and togetherness, and it not refusing to go into grid mode and stuff. But I think we got through it. So, lady and gent, how are things? How's life? How's COVID been treating you?
Very well, thank you. Yes. I've had a great day. I've been out and about in the world.
And by comparison, I have just come out of 10 days isolation, having encountered infections in my everyday life. So we're leading very separate lives at the moment, aren't we, Heidi?
Oh yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you want to tell us about yourselves then? I'm not sure how I would. You, from what I believe, you're co-authors. Can you tell us how that works? What you're writing? Something about yourselves.
So we're both married, but not to each other. So, but we've been writing together for 10 years now. We met at Birmingham Writers Group and started writing together. I thought we'd just write a short story, but Iain was all up for writing a novel. So we wrote our first novel and went down the independent publishing route. And that was Clovenhoof. Satan made redundant and sent to live in Birmingham. And then I think we've written about 20 novels now across different genres, but always comedy. We do like to write comedy.
Yeah, it is shocking that we probably don't know how many novels we've written now. It depends how you count them, I think.
That's a good thing, surely.
How big does a book have to be to count as a novel is one of those questions. So, we've got sort of part novels, almost novels and so on. But I think we're up to 23 or 24. So it's been 10 years of us working together in various different ways. And as Heidi says, our first novel together was Clovenhoof, which is the first in a 7-book series, basically about Satan's adventures living in suburban England. In the last 5 years, we also did the Odd Job series. Has been variously described as sort of like a bit like the Charles Stross Laundry Files, or like The Office meets Men in Black, about the government bureaucrats who have to deal with the evil Lovecraftian monsters that live beneath our world, and various other projects here, there, and everywhere. We've still not killed each other, so that's really quite good, isn't it, Heidi?
Yeah.
That's always a plus.
Yeah. Why did you choose to work together rather than pursuing your own projects independently?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I can tell you how we started writing together, but the reasons why we prefer it to writing independently. We had a workshop. Birmingham Writers Group had a workshop about collaborative writing, and the person that ran the workshop went through all the different methods and pros and cons. And at the end, he said, "Put your hand up if you want to write with somebody else." And Iain and I were literally the only two with our hands up. We were both super keen. And it took us a little while to get round to it after that. But I think we both had a real manic enthusiasm for it, for reasons that I'm not sure about. But yeah, we quite enjoy the process. I think it's quite a sociable process.
Do you not tread on each other's toes at all then?
That's a really interesting point. When we first started out, because it is that thing that, writing is ostensibly a solitary activity. Writing is one of those weird careers to go into, because often people who go into writing, we're quite introverted people, we're quite wrapped up in our own worlds, and you do this very private thing. And then if you have a modicum of success, then everyone kind of goes, now you must go out and meet the world and, be a performing actor on stage. So writing's very solitary. So actually, when you get to do it with somebody else, it's kind of really comforting and nice to help you. Do we turn each other? So we did start out, and we said we copied the rule. I think it was Richard Curtis and Ben Elton when they were writing Blackadder together. They had a rule which is if one of them crosses out a joke, the other one isn't allowed to put it back in again afterwards. You know, you can't sort of re-undo the thing the other person did. And I suppose we've had a couple of tussles and backwards and forwards about things. Subtle. We've never argued. It'd be nice if, like, you know, one of us one day just kind of went, I've had enough of this, and just threw the wall and stormed out and go, you know, and you're a lousy writer. No, we never really got to that point. We have sometimes our brains have gone different ways. We started on different projects, kind of thing, headed off different directions. We've always come back together, and I think we still very much enjoy it. Because it is an odd process. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, obviously there are lots of writers who are collaborative, who work together. I'm trying to think of examples now, famous partnerships, you know, how they work together, whether there's one main partner and the other one fills it. There are examples, I think there are good examples of, particularly amongst science fiction writers, where you buy a book and there's like someone's name in big writing at the top, like, you know, Arthur C. Clarke or Anne McCaffrey or Isaac Asimov. And then there's another name in tiny writing underneath. It's the person they worked with, but who probably did most of the writing. Oh, by the way, I'm not casting any aspersions there about the works of great authors there, by the way. But, you know, the idea that someone is basically doing the donkey work for somebody else. So there's different ways of working together, and yeah, finding a method that works for you is kind of important.
So how does that work? So I know when if I want to do something, I'm very one-minded about it, and I you know, I'll zone in and just do that. But if somebody tries to get me to do something else, my mind's just like, I am just totally not into this. So what happens if you've got, like you said, you've got different projects, you're going off in one way, Heidi's going off in another way. How do you bring that together to a point where you're both sort of interested?
I think we've worked together long enough now to recognise and understand who's best off doing what thing. So we are able to organise the work quite well. And one of the, I think, keys to making this work, I'm convinced anyway, is having a similar work ethic. So you could be, I honestly believe that outstrips talent, ideas, everything else. If you have a similar approach to the work, and I think we both do, then you can sort of iron out the other stuff. It's all doable if you've got good communication, and we do. We can normally iron things out. But yeah, we've sorry, Iain.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
I was just going to say that we've experimented with different models of working. You know, there's lots of different ways you can tackle the writing of a novel, and I think we haven't tried them all, but we've tried most of them.
I remember maybe about 3 years ago, roughly about the same time, we both had dreams. We do this sometimes. Heidi has dreams and then says, let's write a novel about this, and I'm often walking the dog and I go, let's write a novel about this. But it's about 3 years ago, we both had dreams at the same time. And I think Heidi's dream, I don't want to put words in your mouth there, Heidi, but I think your dream was about a family at breakfast, and one of them had rented out part of their brain to a company or something. And around at the same time, I had a wonderful nightmare in which me and my family, I was clearly a child again, we were all sleeping in a room, and a Christmas elf came in to kill us. And out of those two dreams, in that 1 year, we did end up writing them as two separate novels. The science fiction novel Japalink, about people renting out parts of their brain to a giant data company, and Candy Canes and Buckets of Blood, which was about a tribe of murderers. And
that sounds awesome.
It's yeah, but you know, right, sometimes, you know, your dreams, you know, aren't necessarily the best guide to what should be a good story, because, you know, 3/4 of the way into a novel about murderous Christmas elves, you know, it's like, what happens now? And then someone goes, well, then there's a zombie reindeer, and it comes along, and
it writes itself.
writes itself, yeah. Yeah, we often, I mean, Heidi is very tolerant. Right now, you see, I'm still slogging through powering through the opening chapters of a zombie novel, in which, again, giant tech company, nanotechnology is turning people into household appliances. I'm sure Heidi's looking at it kind of going, Iain, what is this thing? How can people be, take toaster zombies seriously, or microwave zombies seriously? And I'm sure I'll either gently shelve it at some point, or we'll pick it up together as a project. We're very tolerant. Tolerant might be a good quality that we might have.
I think.
What is your writing? Sorry, go Mark.
No, you fire away, Pete. You go on.
No, what's your writing process? I mean, obviously, when you're both working on a novel, how do you both write on a novel at the same time without kind of tripping over each other's toes in terms of the plot, and make sure you're kind of writing in the same tone and following the same plot structure that you've both got in mind?
So Method A, the very first one that we used on Clovenhoof, we've used this quite a lot, is where we would write synopses for the chapters. We would meet, do some planning on paper, decide roughly what chapters we needed. Both of us would write synopses for chapters anywhere in the book, really. Swap them over, the other person would write the chapter, then we would swap back again for editing. And that way you smooth out the stylistic differences. So that's the basic method. But we've done lots of variations on that. And the one that we've used quite often latterly, because we now know which things suit us best as writers, Iain is the master of witty dialogue. So when there's a lot of talking and chit chat, Iain will do those bits. I like to do the slapstick and the action scenes. So we tend to carve it up by scene a little bit more now.
Yeah, and I think. Sorry, yeah. I was just going to say, because it is that element now. I think one of our models is, and I need to find a name for it that does it justice, but where Heidi goes along and sows chunks of chaos in the story, and then I come along afterwards and sort of sew it together in some sort of way. And that's not one thing. It's a bit. I always think it's a bit like it's a bit like in a James Bond movie, where James Bond at the beginning of the film always gets given the gadgets that he'll need towards the end of the film. And of course, what happens there is the writers have written the story, and then they're going, oh dear, we have put James Bond in a corner here. He's tied to a cage, and the sharks are going to come and get him. Dr. Kananga is about to win the day. I know, we'll give him a watch that is a saw blade and a magnet or whatever. And I suppose the more recent model is that Heidi lays down the book, and then I come along like the writer and insert the gadgets beforehand that make the end of the book work. And we have that kind of approach, because I think also the two things that we do bring to it, both positive things, is Heidi brings an element of chaos, and I bring an element of order.
Yin and yang.
That tension is never more clear than when I break out a spreadsheet.
It's all about spreadsheets.
What this requires is a spreadsheet. And Heidi's going to go, no, you trampled over all my creativity, and I'm going, no, little things in little boxes with numbers at the end. And I think that's part of the yin and yang that we kind of try and bring to things. That works, certainly works for the time being.
The author we had last week, Bryony, she used a spreadsheet, didn't she, Pete, to sort of kind of map out her process.
Yeah, never knock the power of a spreadsheet.
Are you against them, Heidi? Are you sort of kind of au naturel? It has to sort of kind of flow out.
Yeah. I think it goes back to when I first encountered spreadsheets. I just feel like they they ruined my natural relationship with numbers.
I do love a good spreadsheet, I have to say.
So, would it be fair to say that you, Heidi, are a pantser,
I am.
and Iain is a plotter?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you know these phrases, these writers' phrases.
You know, Heidi is very keen to just kind of like, let's write, let's see where this goes. And I'm there kind of going, where's my 3-act structure? You know, where's my denouement? Where's my payoff? And I think that's very, very, very important. Which is weird when I think about it, because actually, in terms of our background jobs before we, became, writers, Heidi works in technology, and and I'm a school teacher. Heidi's the one who's actually in the technical focused job, and I'm the one who spends my day faffing around with kids, really. The fact that we have the reverse of that to the writing is interesting.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask as well is, what software do you use? I mean, when you're kind of writing out the story, I mean, what software do you actually use to write out the entire novel, and then kind of make sure it's all combined together in one document, manuscript?
We use Word, nothing complicated. We use Word and Dropbox.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's really important. The Dropbox has been, a big part of it. By the way, other file sharing services are available. But it is that business that if we were doing this 20 years ago, we would literally be posting things to each other. Well, okay, 20 years ago, we'd be emailing. But, you'd actually have to rely on file transfer and personal file management. Heidi at many points has suggested we use things like Google Docs, or indeed, the live version of Word, which fills me with terror. The idea that when you change a thing, it changes the thing, as opposed to traditional word processors where you change it and then you can save it or not save it and go back and undo. And I know the live documents have all of that functionality, but I'm quite frightened by the idea, both in my personal life and at work, the idea that if I change that thing, it's changed for everybody right now. And I think some collaborative writers can use that kind of method, but I think there's an element that's too much climbing without a rope for me. I like to have the certainty of
yeah, I think when you've got that sort of thing, I can understand that. Like, as much as I'm very much for using whatever tech is available, and the sort of the newer the better. I understand that things can go wrong, and it's better to have that sort of kind of each sort of draft. It's saved, and you saved it, you pass it on, they can then edit and come back, and you can keep a record of it, you can keep track of it, and so where things are. Whereas, if you change it on Word and there's no sort of the history wipes out, or something goes wrong, as invariably can happen with these things, there's no going back from that.
You've got that element as well. I'm not specifically speaking about our writing now. I first started using computers personally in my life around about 25 years ago, in the mid-90s. I built myself the first 386 computer, and you had that computer and you did your stuff on. And I don't know when the last time it happened in my life was, but that thing that every few years a hard drive would crash, and then you'd remember that you really had backed things up as well as you thought you had, and then you'd have people cry about the things that you had lost, and if we do live in a world where that doesn't happen anymore, I don't think so. The idea that your work is always there somewhere, your files, your music, your videos, whatever, they're always there somewhere, whereas starting out in a world where those things could be gone in the blink of an eye.
It's true. I need to sort of back up stuff now, so I made multiple backups of things, because I went through a stage where I had hard drives for backups, but just was like, I'll sort it out at some other point in time, I'll do it again, and I had literally one hard drive which had all my photographs on it, my music on it, stuff from my dad on it, and one day it just died. it literally just went, and I hadn't backed up any of it. And I tried to get it recovered, and I couldn't, and I lost everything. And I've never felt so sick in my entire life because I lost it all. And if it weren't for the fact that I'm a prolific social media user, then I would have lost everything. But thankfully, I had that. So it was just sort of like, my God, it was just like, couldn't believe it. And I was just like, I'm now like literally back up everything as much as I can.
Yeah.
I was going to say, obviously, the last, just going back to your writing, in the last 15 months, we've in this new world, let's just say, how has the pandemic changed your dynamic for writing, and also has it inspired anything, like any new stories?
It did inspire some new stories, actually. We did the foolhardy and reckless thing of writing about COVID. Our character Clovenhoof, we've broken out a kind of diary format in the past. When Brexit happened, we did some stuff there, and so we decided we would write a monthly release of the Isolation Chronicles, as we called them. And we also decided that we would just publish them as we wrote them and donate the money to the Trussell Trust. So, since then, we've compiled them into a novel, and so that Trussell Trust project has ended. But I think we made about £7,000 for the charity, so we were pretty pleased by that. And I quite like the fact, without sounding at all pompous, the fact that I can look back now and it's like, oh my God, that really did happen like that. It's moved so quickly that I'm really glad we wrote some of it down. It's like not a historical document, but at least it's a bit of a reminder of all that bog roll nonsense and clap in and all that.
Do you know how ridiculous that the bog roll thing got? My ex, she's Polish, and we were getting some toilet paper. We went to a shop because everybody was like literally ramming all the shops. So she went off miles away to try and see if we could get anything. And she got she found some toilet paper, and she went up to the what's it called, the counter to pay for it and stuff, and turned around, and within about 5 seconds, some guy had literally picked up the toilet paper and put it into his sort of thing, and she turned around, she went, that's my toilet paper. And he went, no, it's not. And he said, you don't deserve it, this isn't your country. And then he started having a go, and I was like, if I had been there I would have gone absolutely mental. But I was just like, she managed to get it back. Security came over, they actually looked at the security tape just to prove that the guy had taken this toilet paper. This guy literally kicked off about toilet paper. It was absolutely insane.
There's a really good point there about comedy, because we did that for the Isolation Chronicles, and that worked out okay. But beforehand, we had done Clovenhoof's Diaries. Again, this is Satan living on Earth, and we thought Brexit's coming up. Everyone's voted for Brexit, so I think it would have been probably about the autumn of 2018, and we said we'll do a month-by-month diary, which we'll release each episode as it goes, based upon the things that have been related to Brexit. And of course, Brexit will definitely happen within those 12 months. So then that'll be part of the climax of the book. And of course, we get round to, January, February, and we're going to go, Brexit's not actually happening. We voted for it, we know it's happening, and you get the problem with comedy is when, and it seems to be a feature of our world from the last 5 years, when the real world is more stupid than comedy.
Yeah.
So I think one of my favourite moments in, for instance, Clovenhoof's Diary is where Clovenhoof discovers that the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, has awarded ferry contracts to ferry companies that have no boats. And so and he'll get involved in that. But you kind of go, it's so mad, no one would believe it, but it is true. And it's these elements of things that are so utterly true. And the toilet roll is a good example, and things about, PPE and PPE shortages and who gets the contract it's hard to not make it political. But the idea that, you know, everyone's scrabbling around for these bits of plastic essentially, and someone's shoving banknotes in their pockets, and that the real world is sufficiently daft that you got to go an extra mile to get some actual comedy from it. Because again, a couple of years before that, in a slightly similar way, after Donald Trump won the election, 2016, 2017, we decided to write a short, again, Satan meets Donald Trump novella. And anything daft we could think that Donald Trump could have said or done, he'd done. He had done it. And we just kind of really, it's really tough for comedy writers when the world is just too daft.
The insane thing is, again, without sort of kind of delving too deep into sort of politics and stuff, but it's like, it's just the fact that you've got people who are so sort of entrenched in that sort of view, and you know, you're looking at it and going, this is funny, right? This is ridiculous, this is absolutely insane. You know, people, you got to agree with me. And there's some people going, yeah, I don't see it, you know, I don't understand. It's like, but seriously, it's not me, it's not just me being sort of a knobhead. It's like, that's ridiculous, that's insane, really. And they're just like, nope, we're fine with that. The world is flat. It's 6,000 years old, and an orange tangerine is the president of the United States of America, and you're just like, what's going on? I spend most of my time arguing with creationists and flat earthers and stuff, so they're generally on my hit list and stuff. Coming from Northern Ireland, it's full of them, so it's just like, you know, they're all over the place.
I think, you know, coming from Northern Ireland, there's an interesting thought, and I think we got this with our Trump novella as well, is actually, you know, there's plenty of issues, whether it's Brexit or Trump or indeed everything in Northern Ireland, that actually, if you're going to approach that, you know, you're going to upset somebody. You know, you can't, you know, or even if you try and offend nobody, someone's going to read something into it that, you know, people don't like popular writers necessarily being political. Is that true, Heidi? Is that correct? I don't know.
I think we got more flack for the Trump novel than anything we'd written previously, and yes, whichever, because we tried to tread a fairly neutral line. I mean, it wasn't that neutral because we were pulling at him, but yeah, we had a few angry reviews about it.
You always get that sort of like, and I always see it when something like that kicks up, he's just like, oh, I come here for comedy, and I come here for war games, or I come here for all the different things, but you know, I don't want politics. And it's like, yeah, but it's happening, and you know, it's ridiculous, and you should really, it's like, you know, the epitome of it was the Black Lives Matters thing, and people were going, oh, I don't want to hear about Black Lives Matter, because, you know, this isn't what I'm here for. I'm here for Warhammer 40,000, or I'm here for such, and it's just like, but that's a thing, it's important, and it should be mentioned, and I
remember when we kind of chose to follow through with Black Lives Matter and do Blackout Tuesday, and said, no, we have, Geek Pride has been generally apolitical. You know, we have no kind of, as an entity, have no particular political affiliation. You know, this is geeky and fun. But sometimes you have to make a stand. And we said, okay, no, with Black Lives Matter, this is correct, and we will stand with that.
Yeah.
And we got some, you know, most of the people were, yes, thank you for doing that, and really supportive of us. Others went, well, I come here for Geek, not Black Lives Matter. And yeah, some people left. And as well, bye.
Yeah, that was amusing. That was the comments and stuff. It was just like, seriously, it was just like, I was like, wow. And I actually felt bad for them because they were getting lunged on by everybody else. But I mean, it's just like, that's the one thing that annoys me. It doesn't annoy me. What gets me is like when people just jump on other people, even if they're wrong. And it's just like, you're kind of being as bad as they are sometimes. So you just got to sort of leave it. But yeah, it was madness, pure madness.
Going back onto the writing, hard right, so to speak, why do you always kind of embed comedy in your writing, regardless of genre? What is it about the comedy that kind of keeps bringing you back, coming back in your stories?
I think part of it's for ourselves because we like writing comedy, and it's kind of where our writing preferences intersect very heavily. But also now we've got a readership. They expect the funny and we don't have to stray too far into seriousness. And they go, yeah, it's not quite as funny though, is it? So yes, it's an expectation now, but I don't think we have a problem with that because we both really like making each other laugh as well as ourselves.
Heidi definitely explained they're essentially being held hostage by our readers there and forced to churn out stuff that they want us to write. And I think there's it. One of the reasons why we write comedy as well is that it creates a lightness that actually gives us freedom. That in fact we can flex and be a bit more silly about things. And I think also as comedy writers, because comedy it's probably the worst genre to pick, because we often have this discussion, right? It's like, okay, so for instance, you go and see a science fiction movie or a fantasy movie or a horror movie and you didn't like it and you kind of go, meh. You see a comedy and you didn't laugh, your response is usually one of hatred. If we're expected to find something funny, but we don't, it actually generates a really unbelievably negative response in people. So actually, comedy is one of those things that this is why I would never be a stand-up comedian, because it's horrible. There you are on stage, and basically it's laugh or die. You wouldn't have that experience with a singer or a traditional play, where basically you either entertain them or they're mildly bored. In comedy, you have to win every time. You have to succeed. And I think comedy is not a good choice in that sense of something to write. Heidi has vanished.
Heidi has vanished. She's disappeared into the ether.
Oh,
Driven her away. That's really what's gone on there.
so when we find out this is part of the act,
That's the other thing I was going to say about comedy is that we set out to be funny, but you never know if you yourself are funny. In fact, it's probably more true that most of us think we're funny when we're not. And I'm putting myself in that category. Trust me, my children do not think I'm funny. So we happen to write stuff together, and then people did like it, and we kind of go, oh, people like this. They actually did laugh a bit. So that becomes a bonus there. She's back.
She's back.
I'll stop talking about her now. I was saying, Heidi, this notion that we didn't know that we were funny, and I still don't know that we're funny. We just write stuff, and then some people happen to like it. It's pure chance.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're right.
Is there any particular subject of humour that you kind of stay away from? Any particular kind of topic that you say, nope, I'm not going to humorise that?
One of the things that animals, I think we have strong feelings about animals because readers have strong feelings about animals. So we quite often feature animals, and Iain tells me off for this. Every time I bring an intelligent dog into a story, he no more intelligent dog. But what we can't do is harm animals. We can have a little bit of hamsters falling off desks or stuff, but we can't do harm to animals because that would be very. It's weird. You can murder humans with gay abandon, but you cannot harm animals.
Yep. Agreed. You're agreed. I come from I'm a very hard line sort of kind of, I say that I'm not a vegetarian. I'm just like, I love my dog and I love my cat. I've come from families who are both grandfathers were vets, so I've had pets galore as we grew up and stuff, and I'm very, very, very strong feelings about my animals and stuff, especially my dog. I left a girlfriend because she made me choose between a dog and her.
That was a foregone conclusion, to be fair.
Yeah, so the dog's still here. So
I always remember we did a workshop in Leicester, a writing workshop, and we had a comment from a writer who was part of the workshop, and it was a variant on, oh, you can't say anything these days, you know, anything you do say, you know, a rather old-fashioned attitude, you know, whether that was about sexuality or race or ethnicity, that kind of notion of, oh, you just can't say what you want to say anymore, you can't say what you like. And of course, actually, I think there is an element to say that there is no area where, you know, you can't do comedy. Some areas are obviously a lot trickier than others. You know, there are things that, you know, we personally find unfunny, and so we won't put in books. But actually, comedy can tackle any number of issues. It's about how you do it. And I think it's the thing I saw by pure chance. I don't have them in my pocket. I saw a quote from Terry Pratchett on the social media today. The idea that, you know, satire is laughing at authority, you know, but if the person you're laughing at is hurting, then it's not satire, it's bullying. And actually, I think when you're doing comedy, the thing you need to think of is, what are we laughing at here? And actually, are we punching up or punching down? And I think that's the one thing, you know, comedy always has to punch up, you know, the plucky underdog, you know, beating or making fun of the sort of like, you know, the authority figures. That's always the freedom of comedy issue. I believe that was the reason why Norman Wisdom was one of the few film stars allowed to have his films showed in Albania, because he always played the plucky underdog fighting against authority, you know, and that appealed to the Albanian sensibility during the Cold War, I think.
Yeah, I've got a friend who his wife's Russian, and he used to teach English in Russian, and he was saying that, and that's actually, to be honest, I saw some documentaries about it as well. So it's like, you know, they're very, Russia, obviously, Putin-led Russia is, you can't say anything against the regime because, you know, it's just like you're going to get disappeared. But apart, you know, comedy-wise, you can do whatever you want, and they literally have a huge comedy scene, taking the piss out of the Kremlin, taking the piss out of Putin and stuff like that, and it's acceptable because it's comedy, and it's, you know, it's got a different sort of air about it. You know, you can sit there and do it, and it's sort of accepted.
Yeah, I think there's also an interesting philosophical. I know Heidi and I had this conversation before. Is that comedy? I'm stories full stop, but comedy in particular doesn't change the world. You know, in that, for instance, when you're watching How I Got News for You, and they're mocking the government. They're not actually winning over the government. What they're probably doing unconsciously is making us feel happy about someone mocking the government, and therefore actually we are satisfied. And then actually with comedy, you know, you may be satirizing stuff, but actually it's not necessarily changing opinions. So actually, God, sounds so bloody miserable. The powers that be have comedy to exist, because actually it gives the people that freedom within a safe way. That sounds so dark, Iain. I'm sorry.
No, I think I get that. It's basically saying that, you know, with satire, it's a way of kind of having a moan about something, but you're not actually attacking someone. So, yeah, I think that's quite a good point.
Better to have a laugh at Matt Hancock than, you know, grab your torch and pitchfork and, you know, go around to his constituency office. It's, you know,
that guy. Oh my God, man! It's just wow.
Have you seen anything like Jonathan Pye? Have you been watching Jonathan Pye at all? Yeah, his latest video. I'm just going nodding yes. This is funny because you are so rage-filled and indignant about it, and you're absolutely spot on.
Yes. Oh man, yeah, I do like I do like him. He's pretty brutal. You know, sometimes I don't, you know, he can be a bit too over the top sometimes, but you can tell it's obviously his character and stuff, so it's still amusing. But yeah, that was pretty bang on. Do you find back to the sort of kind of writing side of things, do you find it's easier to sort of write because there's two of you, so you don't have that sort of mental block, because somebody, you know, Heidi can take up from when you're stuck, or vice versa, you can take off when she's stuck? Is it easier being a duo?
I would say so. I would definitely say so, because we don't often get stuck, but we sometimes get hiccups where we need input. So there's always input because there's two of you, and the value for comedy as well is how much you can stretch an idea. Because for comedy, you've got to stretch ideas. You know, invariably the first version of a joke that you think of is not as funny as the second version. You know, the stretched version of the joke that you will eventually arrive at. So it is helpful in those ways. We don't.
It's like children playing a prank, egging each other on. That's what a lot of egging each other on is kind of, you know, so kind of go, what do you think of that? And go, oh yeah, do more of that, do more of that. So that's really helpful. And I think, you know, we were talking about like Dropbox and file sharing. And one of the things that has definitely historically helped us is, you know, when a little alert pops up and goes, Heidi has changed chapter 1 document. And you go, oh, she's written something. I go have a look. Oh, I best write my bit. And it was, I think it's more so in the early days, but it was quite a competitive process to kind of try and, you know, get ahead of the other one, add stuff that the other one had to put in there. So I think in that sense, it works well. But I mean, I would emphasize what Heidi said, that we happen to have a similar work ethic, same kind of goals in mind. And therefore that has worked, because it's one of those things, you know, I don't know if you agree, but that kind of adage that, you know, never lend money to friends, never buy, you know, a car off a mate, you know, because mixing business and pleasure never really works, kind of thing. I think, you know, actually when you decide to do something meaningful and formal with somebody, you know, who's a friend or whatever, then, you know, it can go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Have you ever been tempted to use like document writing software such as Scrivener or Page 4?
Some of our friends swear by Scrivener, but
Yeah.
we're quite fond of the low tech. Well, I say low tech, but we're quite fond of the basicness of Word, because certainly, I mean, when it comes to formatting the books for publication, I'm a little bit wary of things that stuff it with you know, other invisible characters or nonsense like that. So we always strip it back to plain text anyway. So no, I haven't been tempted to do that. I don't know about you, Iain.
No, not really. No, because I am that control freak, and I like to see very clearly what I'm doing. I mean, because you got all these opportunities to do different things. I think, for instance, stuff like Scrivener is a really good example. I really do like that. But there's lots of different approaches. Right, a friend of ours, who I won't mention because I don't want to, you know, poke at other people's methods. She's taken recently to dictating her novels a heck of a lot.
Wow.
And in fact, extended, she works with a plot out, and obviously dictation's nothing new, but actually, you know, working with a plot outline and then sitting there with a, you know, the computer, as it were, as the dictaphone, recording it. And obviously, you could put it through, you know, dictation software, but I think it gets emailed overnight to a typist in Australia, who the next day, you know, sends back, you know, 7,000 words of, you know, book. And I think she's found that as a method in terms of producing quality text at enormous speed has worked very well for her. So, you know, I think actually it's all about finding a system that works for you. Because also when it comes to things like writing, as with any kind of creative endeavor, you know, how fast your hands move and how fast your brain moves, it's two different speeds necessarily, you know. Heidi, I know, can bang out 5,000 words in a day if she, you know, if pressure's put to her. Whereas, you know, after about 1,000 words, you know, the trade unionist in my brain just kind of start getting out their placards and kind of go, no, that's it.
I could think of anything worse than dictating. Like, because I work for, I've worked for a few solicitors, and I work for a solicitor now, and thankfully I don't have to do sort of anything like that anymore. But they used to have dictation where you would dictate your files, and like my dyslexic brain was just like, yeah, I can't do this. I need to type it out and see it, and then sort of read it about 1,000,000 times before sending it off. I can barely speak as it is now, let alone dictate what's going on in my head.
Yeah, I heard from. Sorry.
I was just saying, I really like Dragon. I think it works incredibly well. But it's like Iain said, it's how fast your brain works. Because for composing fiction, Dragon's not that interested in. So if I've got something and I know exactly how it needs to go down, then I'm happy to dictate it. But it is a bit of a distraction when you haven't got it all lined up.
Well, I remember Isaac Asimov. He went through a phase. Obviously, we're now talking 60, 70 years ago, of dictating his novels. He would dictate them to a tape recorder, in one room, and then he'd give them to his wife in another room to type up. And I think she complained that she didn't know how to transcribe his wordless grunting when his characters were having arguments. It's that sort of how do you transliterate. Sorry, Peter, you were going to say something there. Sorry.
No, basically, I was chatting with Dana Fredsty a couple of days ago, and she said she would transcribe something to write. So she'd record it to write, and then she'd be listening back to it the next day and trying to read through what Dragon had transcribed, going, "What does that mean? Why did?" And it was kind of just make up random words, and you're going, "Nope, that's not what I said. I'm pretty certain I didn't say the mop met the bucket. What did I really mean?" So I meant to do exactly like when you're typing yourself, you type what you mean rather than Dragon saying, "Well, I think you meant that."
Yeah.
Yeah, because I use a fair bit of transcription software in my job as a journalist, and there's a few times, especially with strong accents, it just comes up with going, "Nope, can't do that." If someone's got a very strong Welsh or very broad Yorkshire or Scottish accent, it dies. It just kills over and goes, "Nope, can't cope."
It made me laugh today because I actually did. I used Dragon earlier for something I was just doing. It's a planning document that I haven't yet saved, so Iain hasn't seen it. And I used the word ray gun, and it's transcribed it as Reagan, as in the president. Seriously alter the meaning of a sentence.
Amazing.
Oh, I now like the idea of a story set in the future where the characters break out their ray guns.
Oh, there's going to be a President Ray Gun.
Yeah.
Ray Gun. That's got to happen.
President Ray Gun's Star Wars project. That's weird. It's another right way to happen.
I just like the idea that weapons are being named after presidents. That'd be pretty good.
Oh yeah.
The Trump. That'd be the most useless gun ever.
Yes, that'd be obviously a smoke grenade, wouldn't it?
Is always entertaining. I think that'd be good. Yes, I mean, actually, it's that thing I saw because I saw the thing this week where they were doing the shock testing on the aircraft, the American aircraft carrier. They were dropping, I think it was 400,000 pounds of explosives next to the aircraft carrier to see how well it's. And it was the USS Gerald Ford. And I thought to myself, that's not a very exciting president to have for an aircraft.
Yeah.
I think something Gerald Ford did, it's a bit tricky, that one, So I don't know if the sailors aboard the Gerald Ford are equally excited that that's the name of their boat, Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? What is it? He couldn't stand up and chew bubblegum at the same time, I think they said, or something like that. What was it? There was some apparently he was a very good president. He was just, just a bit sort of, dry.
I mean, actually, one thing amused me this week is apparently no one's willing to publish Donald Trump's presidential memoirs. The only president that has never kind of had a book deal is Trump. I just find that an absolute howl.
I'm surprised that one of the crazies from sort of one of the crazies.
It's going to self-publish. It's going to be self-published by some dude in wherever, and it's just going to be horrendous.
It'll still be a bestseller.
It will, yeah. Because the thing is, I'd buy it just so I could just read the crazy and stuff. So, and he'd think that's popularity, but it's not. It's just like, this dude is freaking crazy.
It's like all the journalists who will buy it just so they can explain why it's so bad. It's I think no, it's unavoidably going to be a bestseller.
Well, I remember this episode of Spooks where there was this kind of former politician that had published his shocking memoirs, was going to reveal all the secrets, and basically the MI5 managed to get hold of a pre-published copy. And we kind of, right, we've got a day to read through this. Everyone sit down, read it. And everyone's just going, page 42, page 69, page 115. And then everyone's went, page 160. And I can imagine it just being a lot like that. Just worse. But yeah. Actually, I think the last time we met, we were talking. We ended up talking about LARP.
Oh, he's.
We that was when we were writing the Cloven Hoof's Diary series.
Okay.
Because we wanted to send one of the characters into the world of LARPing, and this is a very non-geek character, Neris. She's her main function in the story is to explore the world of manhunting in the voracious female manhunter kind of way. It's her hobby. So do you remember we actually asked you whether it's possible to do an erotic LARP?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
It's not impossible, but you need a lot of discussion beforehand and several content warnings and highlighting and a
Safe
lot of
words
agreement in advance.
But I think we did end up chatting about the idea that sort of like did some LARPing based on things like Vampire the Masquerade, where it's more of a social LARP rather than my limited experience of it, which is running around a wood with a foam sword. That actually a social LARP. And I think one of the things I remember, and I might be totally misquoting you if you've got this idea that if you're doing social interactions in a role-playing sense, trying to work out who wins and who doesn't, where the success lies. But essentially, it boils down to perhaps the equivalent of, rock, paper, scissors sort of thing. I have charmed you with the scissors. I'm sure that no one does that. But it is the sense of how those things overlap. And of course, then you get into the rather potentially scary world of LARPing bleeding into real life. Do you do a LARP? But essentially that you're always playing it, and I think there's a whole range of things there. So we wanted to have a bit of fun with that from a perspective of how we would get people who are effectively not geeky, not into that kind of thing, how to get a character who's like that into that kind of realm. And I think that we enjoyed that. We enjoyed it very much. Brexit still didn't happen in time for that chapter, but we still done them. It was ahead.
I remind you, you're talking about rock paper scissors and LARP. When I was in university, there was a group of I had this sort of group of war gamers. Like, I was going through my sort of I'm cool. I'm not into sort of this sort of thing, but the geeky side of me was. So my mates would take the piss out of me because I was into wargaming and things like that. So I would try and hide it from them. So I had this little sort of group of guys who they did LARP. And it must have been Vampire the Masquerade, but they did it, and they all sort of gathered in the room. They all dressed up, and they did rock, paper, scissors for... Yeah,
you're talking of the Laws by Night system for the World of Darkness LARP. Specifically, mostly Vampire the Masquerade, but there's also Werewolf the... God, what's the name of it? Werewolf the Apocalypse and Maze the Ascension.
Yeah, because I remember talking to them about it. I said, "So how does it work? How do you sort of do you roll dice? What do you do?" And it's like, "No, it's rock, paper, scissors." And I was just like, "All right, okay, that's cool." And I thought in there I was like, "That's cool." I'm on my mates. That's so sad, man. I said, "Yeah, that's totally sad." And I was just like, "That's cool. I'll have a good go with that."
It was actually a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do it, especially when everyone's in character and you kind of politicking, backstabbing against each other. But when you're running around a bus station at night and you're trying to do rock paper scissors in between actions, you do feel a bit of a pillock.
People looking at you thinking, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing though about being geeky, because we use the word geek to think about certain kind of things in life, whether that is role playing or fantasy or certain types of film or certain types of game. Whereas in fact, actually, everybody's a geek in their own way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Currently there are hundreds of thousands of men who are currently being very geeky whilst they're indulging in their geek hobby of watching the football.
Yes.
There's quite a number of them cosplaying in the shirts, it's the same thing. It's a fascination with a specific thing, with the numbers and the stats, and having a chat about it with your mates and being on the forums. And I think, it's actually, because I know for Heide, again, I don't want to speak about Heide, but for instance, when it comes to things like sewing and crafting and that element of geekiness, we don't usually call it that, but that's what it is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's like I remember, and it's funny you brought up the football thing, because in one of my old jobs, they pretty much, actually, to be honest, every job I've had, there's been a fantasy football league there. They've always had a fantasy football league, and this job, they're all sort of like, it was in Bolton. They're all northern lads and stuff. They talk about football all the time. I get grief for coming in 5 minutes late, but they'd sit there and talk for half an hour about football and stuff like that. And they were like going on doing their fantasy football league and stuff like that. And then one of them turns around and said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm playing fantasy football." And I went, "Really? You're playing fantasy football?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to Stockport. We're going to play fantasy football. I've got an orc team and I've got a human team, and but he says, "Oh, that's not the same thing." I said, "It is the same thing." I said, "So let's break this down." It's just like, I buy players, you buy players, I trade players, you trade players. I win. I get points if my characters. It's exactly the same thing. It's just you just don't want to accept that. Saying it's like, "Oh, you're a nerd," blah blah blah. It's like, "You're nerds. You're all a bunch of nerds." So every time they started talking about football and stuff, I go, "Nerds." It's like, "You're a bunch of nerds." And like, shut up.
It was Neil Stevenson who actually gave this talk once about saying we're all geeks now, and it's absolutely spot on. Be it we're all just passionate about a certain subject.
Yeah.
Be it wargaming, fantasy, tech, privacy, football, train spotting, what have you. But we are all geeks now.
Yeah. Well, my boss will refute that. Like, my boss, he's one of the partners in our law firm. He's a great guy, and he's won all the books that I get. Like, he's so voracious, and he's like super into his Marvel. He's super into sort of like fantasy books and sci-fi and things like that. And he's always giving me sort of recommendations and stuff. But as soon as I call him a nerd, I'm not a geek, and it's like, you totally are. And every time I have, he's sitting there. These guys are, but I'm talking to one of the tech guys in Canada, and he's like, "Oh, they're a bunch of nerds," and I was just like, he's a closet case. He just hasn't accepted it yet. He's definitely a nerd, and he's just like, "I'm not a nerd." You are. And if you're listening to this, Damien, you are.
Does he read the Warhammer 40,000 books?
No, I'm trying to get him to listen to Horace. I've basically, we've got this sort of thing where he's given me a load of sort of books to sort of listen to and audiobooks and stuff. So I'm currently going through The Blade Itself by Abercrombie at the minute, and there's a load of other ones he's given me to listen to, and I've listened to him. I said, "Right, you're going to listen to the Horus Heresy series now," and he's just like, "Oh." I said, "Yes, you're going to do it." There's 55 books. Actually, I think there's more than that now, because they got the new Siege of Terror ones. It's like, you're going to read at least the first one, every single page of it. You're going to come back to me and tell me it's bad, and you're not going to be able to, because it's awesome. And he's just like, "Oh, I'll give it my college try." And I'll say, "Well, we'll see. We'll see."
What are you reading at the moment, guys?
I am reading the most recent book from Queeve McDonnell, who he's a comedy writer, a very successful one, actually. He writes crime comedy, and I cannot remember the title of the most recent book, which is really bad, because I read it on the Kindle and I don't always, see it when I pick it up. But he's a great writer. Very funny.
The title. We sins in the title. Something sins.
Dead Man's Sins. Yeah, I think you're right.
Dead Man's Sins. Because he also wrote that, which we both read recently, the one about the Manchester newspaper investigating things that go bump in the night. That was a nice book as well. Nice bit of comedy. I very much moved on to audiobooks of late. Clearly reached that age now, you know, where if I pick a book to read when I go to bed at night, it falls on my face as I fall asleep, sort of thing. That's all that ever happens. So audiobooks is the way forward for me. And I'm currently listening to The Testament of Gideon Mack. I can't remember the name of the author now. Which I don't always seek out fiction about the devil. We're not obviously obsessed with it. It's about a Scottish Presbyterian minister who gets rescued from the river by the devil. And it's a dialogue between those two, so I'm enjoying that one at the moment. Because I'm not a very speedy reader, I've got to say. Because how much do you read, Heidi? Because I don't know how many books I read each year.
I dip into things, but in terms of novels, I read, I don't know, one every 10 days, something like that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, wow.
I used to read that fast. Then I had children.
The quickest I've ever read a series of books was with Game of Thrones, and I knew they were going to film it in Northern Ireland, and I'd not read any of them. And there was Dance of Dragons had just come out, and I read 5 of those in about a month, just under a month. I literally just hammered them when I was on holiday and stuff. And that's the fastest I've ever read. But other than that, you know, I'm a pretty slow reader. I like reading, but I'm a pretty slow reader. That's why the audiobooks work really well for me, because I can listen to them when I'm walking the dog. I can listen to them when I walk around. So all my sort of downtime where I'm not doing anything else, I can sort of put it on, and that makes me feel like I'm getting through them and stuff.
Like as writers, there's readers out there. I mean, how fast do some of the readers out there read books, Heidi? How many do they go through in a year? It's a crazy number, isn't it?
There's plenty of people who will whack through a novel in a day. Yeah.
Well, they'll not do anything else, to be fair.
My dad was pretty prolific. You know, he would read loads, absolutely, like just books and palm books. Like he'd bring like 23 books or something on holiday with him, and he'd get through most of them and stuff, just because that's it. He'd be glued to the books and stuff. But I can't read that fast. One, because again, dyslexia, so I have to read things over again because I'm like, that makes no sense, and I'm just having to sort of reread stuff. But yeah, the audiobooks is a big save for me. Talking about audiobooks, is that something you guys do? Do you have any of your works in audio? You do?
Yes, we've. I think all of our series books now are recorded in audio. We've used 2 narrators. The most prolific of those is Matthew Lloyd Davis. He does an amazing job, and he brings actually a following with him. He's brought us more fans, which is just marvelous.
It's true. There's a guy called Jonathan Keeble, who I love. Like, so basically anything that he narrates, like he does a lot of the Warhammer books and stuff, but he does sort of history stuff as well. I think he's amazing. So like, if Jonathan Keeble does it, I'm there. I go with him to sort of listen to that. It's very important though with sort of kind of the audiobooks. Is it's going to really do my head in. Pyle, what was the name of the author, science fiction author we had on, Pete?
Which one?
This is I'm gonna check my books now. Just
Kate.
No. Let me just.
Which author?
I'm gonna get it up now. Here, I'll get the things out here. Where is it? It is. Oh yeah, sorry, Gareth Pyle. Gareth Pyle, yeah, Gareth Pyle.
Oh, Gareth Pyle.
Yeah,
yes.
So I was like, he was talking about his books. I didn't have them, so I went out and got the audiobooks, and I was like, brilliant. I'll give these a go. And the narration's so bad. It's just like, I just, I'm going to have to buy, because I want to read them, I'm going to have to buy the books, but I bought the audiobooks. I was actually tempted to tell him. I was like, man, I don't know if anybody's giving me any feedback on this, but I started listening to the audio in this book, and I was just like, it was robotic American sort of, the way when everything's a question, everything's like a question at the end, and it was really doing my head in. I was just like, I can't get through this. It was completely killing it for me.
Makes a huge difference. I mean, again, we're very lucky. We're working with Matthew Lloyd Davis, but I think he's an actor, you know, and he puts himself into these roles and he creates, and sometimes he breathes life into characters in such a way that we kind of go, oh wow, that minor character, we wish we'd written more for them, you know. Some of them, you know, I think there's one he did, but you know, Paul Cloverhoof book, Hell's a Poppin', there's a demon character in Hell, Podshift, who's like a foreman demon. He's got like 1,000 ears, he's got a pencil behind every one of them, you know. All right, mate, you know, let's take a look at this, you know. All right, we've had some cowboys in here and all that kind of stuff. And he was laying into the character. It was fantastic. It was absolutely wonderful. But there's things that continue off, because when he recorded the first of our Rod Jobs books, which is about paranormal sort of investigators in Birmingham, there were some fishmen, like the deep ones from H.P. Lovecraft, and he laden them down with the most horrifically thick Brummie accents, which weren't Brummie accents; they were Black Country accents. And I mean, he worked up these characters wonderfully, and I just kind of go, I don't think we can have a whole book of listening to these accents. So he did go back and re-record them and made them sort of a bit more like Cockney White Boys kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's, you know, good narration really brings something to life. It really does.
Agreed.
And poor narration, which is a shame for the authors, can really, you know, do a disservice to things. So we're really pleased that we got, you know, particularly in Matthew, a narrator who people are just, you know, love just listening to his voice. They really do.
Yeah, there's what is it? There's have you ever heard of the Red Rising trilogy? He's actually on book 5. Something Pierce. What's the first guy's Pierce? Red Rising. Who wrote Red Rising? Pierce Brown. Yeah, Pierce Brown. His audiobooks, like, again, something my boss sort of got me onto, and it's basically about it's meant to be like, it's basically about workers on Mars, and there's different, if you've not heard of it, it's like different castes and stuff like this, and these different castes in the future, and Red is basically like one of the lower working classes and stuff, and they're basically Irish. You know, there's actually an inference within it that they, you know, their ancestors come from Ireland. So the guy narrates it in a really broad Irish accent at the start, and for me, who's literally all the books I listen to, it's sort of like, you know, it's English, sort of like, you know, or even sort of, you know, maybe a more polite sort of American, but not this broad Irish accent, this biggity bong Irish accent. And for the first sort of part of it, I was like, I am not enjoying this, because this Irish accent is really doing my meltdown. It's just like, I appreciate that's how some of them might sound, but it's just like, I'm just not used to it. I'm not getting to it. But it sort of changes, it progresses as the story goes on. It's like, and I got used to it, and it's like, and it sort of kicks in. So I give it time. I was trying to do the same thing with Gareth Powell sort of narrate the book, one of his books, but you know, it wasn't working for me, so I had to stop. I was like, right, I'll buy the books, I'll just read them instead, because the narration's killing it for me. I can't carry on.
Akak Macaque, Gareth Powell.
Say it again.
Akak Macaque, Gareth Powell. That one.
Yes.
His books are great. What a shame to have bad audio.
Yeah, it's just it's you know what it is. It's like, what is it? It's the one. Let's get the Embers of War. So it's this Embers of War one that we was just talking about. It sounds really, really, really good. And we were talking to him, and I was like, right, brilliant, you've sold me, I'm going to get it. And because it's like audiobook, and it's just the audio, and there's different narrators in it, I think, but the first one is this very robotic, and I thought it was like, okay, because it's in the future, maybe it is meant to be like an AI or something sort of talking, but it was just it carried on. There was a bit of a change, and then it went back to this sort of kind of really sort of AI with everything being a question mark at the end, and it was just like, I was like, I hate this, and all I was thinking was this accent is really doing my head in, and I cannot focus on the story because she's just making it so bad for me. And I couldn't carry on, so I was just like, right, I'm just gonna have to buy the books instead, because I can't deal with the audio.
Your mileage may vary type things, because I hang around quite a few audiobook listener groups and audiobook recorder and narrator groups on Facebook, mainly because then you can hear what kind of, like, you know, the two sides of the fence are. And you find amongst the listeners, they'll say things like, can I recommend a book? The narrator must be male, English, And and people have these very specific ideas of what kind of sound voice they want to tell the stories to them. People reject either female narrators or male narrators, and that they like certain accents and not others. Audiobook listeners who want to hear an English accent but not Scottish and not Welsh, not Irish. And I think we all have these kind of inbuilt responses to certain types of voices. And it's kind of interesting in that sense. Because I listened to an audiobook recently, I can't remember which one it was specifically, but it was an American narrator. And there's something about the American accent, which is lovely, but it always seems very, very sincere. Whereas, we sound like we're lying to you all the time. We're trying to fool you. Whereas the American accent has a level of sincerity to it, which actually, before I got into listening to the story, had kind of no, it was too earnest for me. So it's our response to different kind of accents that what one person likes, another hates. It changes person to person, definitely.
Yeah, it was like I sort of like I hate when like Romans and history programs are played by Americans and stuff. It's just like I appreciate the Romans weren't English either, but it was just like that's sort of kind of the cultural norm. You accept sort of Romans being sort of kind of posh, and so whenever you get like films like I can't remember Eagle or something where it's literally they're American, and you're just like that sounds super weird, and I don't know if I like that at all. There was one. Have you ever seen the film Hannibal with Colin? What's the name of the Irish actor? Farrell.
Farrell.
Sorry again.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Colin Farrell. Yeah,
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, and it. Oh my god! And he does an Irish accent. He does an Irish accent. He's been Alexander the Great, and he does an Irish accent. And I'm not sure if he does why he does that. But it's like it's got Val Kilmer in it, and Val Kilmer's like, well, he's doing an Irish accent. I'll do an Irish accent as well, and he's meant to be Philip of Macedon, and I'm just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I would sooner have subtitles and some sort of like ancient Greek being spoken than this. And I was just like, oh man, this is horrible, and I couldn't watch it. It's the only film I've walked out of.
I think my favourite would have to be, because pure chameleon of acting would be Sean Connery, because when he's playing a Russian submarine commander, it's Sean Connery.
Yeah.
When he's playing a Spanish immortal in Highland, a Spanish immortal. No, he's called the Spanish. I think he's meant to be Egyptian. It's still Sean bloody Connery.
Yeah.
But you have that weird sense that actually we have these cultural expectations. Like we want our Romans to speak in English accent. It's like you mentioned Game of Thrones earlier. Why is it that all the Starks are essentially from Rotherham?
Yeah.
Or, hey, lass, but we load fantasy worlds with our own cultural baggage. It's bizarre that we do it, and we don't think anything's wrong with it. Someone points out to us, literally, Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark. They're from Sheffield, aren't they? Basically, why? But it's the thing.
I was thinking it would be weird though if they came out and they had sort of, I don't know, French accents or German accents. You'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? What is this? What is this?
Well, I was watching this Hong Kong action film, Hard Boiled, starring Chow Yun-fat.
Oh yeah, it's a good film.
But incredible, literally incredible violent action film. But I was watching, rather than the subtitle, I was watching the dubbed version.
Oh, mate.
And the dubbed Chow Yun-fat with a broad Cockney accent.
Yeah, it's bad.
And it was just, okay, that's the side of Chow Yun-fat I thought I would never, ever see. And I do not want to see.
Yeah.
It was just took me out of it completely.
I won't do dubs. I would sooner read subtitles than the dubbing, because dubbing's just so bad.
Generally I do, but this was an ancient VHS tape.
All right.
And it was only just, it was just dubbed. So I was like, damn it.
It's like,
yeah. Go.
It's like all the early Jackie Chan stuff as well. It's like, it's all sort of highly.
What I was thinking.
Yeah, all highly dubbed. Like one of my mates, sort of from back in school, and he was Chinese, and he always had all these films from Hong Kong and stuff, and it was just like, you know, all these really sort of Americanized, dubbed over sort of Hong Kong kung fu films and stuff, and I was just like, I was just like, yeah, I think I prefer just having the subtitles.
I
was gonna say one of my favourite bits of
Sorry, because the late 80s, I think one of the sheer pleasure of Jackie Chan films, and half the fun was the really, really poor dubbing.
Yeah.
And it elevated them to grand comedy. Sorry,
I was going to say that one of my favourite bits of dubbing, it's not throughout the, it's not that it was a different like country that made the film. Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of my favourite actors. But if you ever watch Hercules in New York, they dub him over with such a terrible voice actor. It's jarring. It's so bad to watch.
Is that the one where he's in the blue cowboy getup? Is that
no, it's when he's because he's going.
Is that one of his first films?
Chariot, yeah. Yeah.
Because there's always that amusing thing about Arnold Schwarzenegger that, you know, when he first made it big, he offered to, you know, do the German dubs for his own films, but they wouldn't let him because basically he sounds like a yokel in German, you know.
Oh man! I just the dubbing that always got me was a kid, you know, when the BBC used to sort of dub over stuff, when, you know, swear words and things. So you'd have like RoboCop, and then you'd have like "forget me" instead of sort of like, you know, "fuck me" and stuff. And it just like, it was always really amusing because they'd come up with some really random stuff just to put in there, or just cut out stuff altogether.
That's because BBC used to buy up the what they call like the airplane cuts of these films, so they were safer for TV. You know, they still had all the blood and guts and violence, everything. But hey, you can't swear on TV. Oh no, sir. No way.
Mad, absolutely mad.
Oh, Joe. Sorry, just talk about dub very quickly. One of my favourite ones, which I didn't realise till obviously I got much older, was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For whatever reason, in the UK they couldn't use ninja.
Yeah,
they had it as Hero Turtles, which was why.
Yeah, it's too violent. But apparently,
also at the same time as the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles cartoon was done, there's adverts in various magazines for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing games and stuff like that. So he was like, you could write about it. You can just say it on television.
So weird. So weird.
But I used to think they were two different things. I used to think that the Hero Turtles and Ninja Turtles were two different things. I thought, hang on, they were very similar.
I was just thinking, Americans, they've got it wrong again. It's just like, you know, I was like, oh, you know, didn't know. Okay. All right. So before we go, have you got anything coming up? Have you got any books that we need to know about now?
We had a launch yesterday, actually.
Ooh, brilliant.
Ooh.
What we really wanted to have a go at writing some crime books, and what we wanted to emulate was the comedy crime that Carl Hyarson and some of those other Florida writers create, where you've got those larger than life characters, the Florida crazy. And so we decided that we would do that, but set it in the UK and Skegness, because it's a bit like Florida. And so we also decided with the crime thing that we would write all three books. We've written a trilogy and then release them more or less in one go. So we're actually releasing them a fortnight apart, but by mid-July they'll all be out. Brilliant. So yes, we're quite excited because crime is super competitive in the UK as a genre, whereas, you know, normally we've dabbled around the fringes of all the other genres. We've never tackled crime, so we'll either sink like a stone because we don't know what we're doing, or you know, maybe we could make a dent in the crime market. Who knows? But yes, the first one is called Sealfinger. Iain, I'm sure you want to explain how it came to get that title.
Oh, so Sealfinger, or one word, is the book that came out yesterday, and we like to do research for our novels, and so we took a weekend trip to Skegness. Actually, I'm from that part of the world initially. I'm a Lincolnshire boy, but we went to Skegness, and then we went to Natureland there, and we spoke to the seal people. I mean, it's great because when you're a writer, you can just do that. You kind of go, "Hello, we're writers. Can you tell us about thing X?" And we basically just said, "Excuse me, seal person, can you tell me anything interesting about seals whatsoever?" And up in the conversation came this thing, seal finger, which is a disease specifically that you can get from seals, specifically if you're bitten by a seal. And if you're bitten by a seal, the cocktail of bacteria that basically starts percolating through your flesh causes kind of inflammation and rigidity. And I think up until the mid 20th century, the only cure was amputation. So we kind of go seal finger. That's it. Also sounds slightly like a James Bond film. So seal finger, absolutely. So the seal finger came out yesterday, and then a couple of weeks time we got Doggerland. You see, we can't get away from our fantasy and science fiction roots because Doggerland features, if only as a concept, the idea of obviously Doggerland out in the North Sea, buried land, as it hasn't been since the Ice Age. And we just worked on this idea of what if you wanted to basically build some big concrete walls, pump out all the seawater, and essentially re-excavate Doggerland, and then maybe, I don't know, make some kind of Ice Age theme park there. So Doggerland, which was the second book, so we kind of put on our nutty science fiction hats a bit for that one, which is the second book. And then the third one, Sandraker, coming out in about 2 weeks' time. That one is more funny goings on at a country home. Whether people will get turned off by the gruesome murders that pepper the books, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there.
Sounds
I think
very
at least one editor who kind of just went, "Can we get rid of that, and that?" That's the novel. What do you mean the man being boiled to death in his own jacuzzi? Why can't we keep that? It's brilliant, But so yes, we'll see how the world takes to that. So yeah, we've got a lot of fun. And books 4 and 5 definitely going to be set in Florida. So therefore, we're going to have to get past the pandemic and book our research trip to Florida.
Of course, obviously, yeah.
Totally not a tax dodge. It really isn't. We're going to go over there. Actually spend some time in Florida. That should be nice.
Brilliant.
That's the plan.
Wow. Brilliant. Right. Well, we'll leave it there then. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you very much. Really interesting. Thanks for speaking to us, taking some time off your Sunday for having a chat with us. So yeah, there you go. Sealfinger is out now with four more books coming out over the next couple of months.
3 books over the next month or so.
Well, brilliant. There you go. Keep an eye out for them. So for tonight, I've been Matt Geary. With me has been Peter Ray Allison.
Good night, everyone.
John Joe Cosgrove.
Take care, all.
And our guests, Iain Grant.
Cheerio.
And Heide Goody.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Bye.